Okay, well, here we are, folks, back for another one of my live stream builds. And once again, we're back for the B-24. Now, for those who are new to this series, this is the Revell of Germany B-24D, which is just a repop of the old 70s, 80s monogram B-24. I'm going to be building this up with quite a bit of aftermarket. I'm doing some custom scratch building in the bomb bay. I'm using Belcher bits for a nose radar and a lay light under the wing. I'm also using Belcher bits ammo for drop torpedoes and some smoke bomb markers in the bomb bay. I'm using Wild Sow resin for rocket launchers that mount on the forward fuselage, as well as some turrets. And I'm using aviology decals to complete the whole thing as a coastal command bird from World War II in British markings. So if you did not see last week's episode, we got it basically to the point where it was ready to do some weathering, and that's what we're going to do here. So I've done quite a bit of work off camera. So I got things, for example, the insides of the engine cowlings on the wings have been painted aluminum. I've also got the fronts of the cowlings themselves, the insides painted aluminum. None of this has been weathered yet, but they're all ready to be weathered. I also have the engines. Now, what I've planned to do, you'll also see I've got half of the fuselage has been weathered, the other half hasn't. And along those same lines with the engines, I have half of the engines weathered and the other half have not. And what that means is here on this stream, we will see the process for finishing the weathering, and you'll get to compare what a weathered unit looks like versus an unweathered unit. And that will allow, just to show how easy it can be to add some depth to a build with effectively very little work on the builder's part. So I also did some work on these, the interior here. You'll see I got the ammo belts painted up, the boxes, the parachute. I've gone ahead and done a little bit of detail painting, and I've as I said, pre-black washed a number of I don't think that's been black washed yet. I believe that has been black washed. I'll have to go through as we work on this. But what I want to show you guys now is if you look on, these two have been black washed, these two haven't. It should show, I'll zoom you in here a little bit. You should be able to see it in the camera, just the difference a simple black wash makes. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and we're going to dry brush these ones, the ones that have the black wash, and you'll compare. Now, to really see the difference, we'll take a look at the interiors of the fuselage. And you can see the difference between one that has a black wash applied and one that does not. And you can see just how much, for example, in this rear fuselage, how much more shadows you see on this one versus this one. And this doesn't have any highlights. This is just strictly the black wash. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to prep to do a dry brush pass. And you'll get to see how the dry brush pass works, how it pops all the highlights in this interior, and how the difference will look between the two halves when I'm done. So let's get you out a little bit more. And the color you use depends a lot on what you're doing. If you have a really light colored interior, obviously you need a really light colored wash. If you're using a darker color, you don't necessarily want to use like a white or an aluminum, but you definitely want a gray that is lighter than what you have. So I'm going to use just light gray here, light gold gray. It's a really, really simple process. I have an older brush that over the years has been destroyed, and it's what I use. It's what I use to do my Dry brushing, you'll see the brush is all frayed and destroyed here, but it works perfectly well for this. So you get yourself whatever. This is a lint-free rag, but anything along those lines works fine. Load up the brush, and then I just brush it out on the paper towel. You want to get out as much paint as you can so it leaves basically you want just a little bit of pigment on the brush. You don't want a heavy liquid. And then you go ahead and you just gently run that. So for example, if you look in here, you've got verticals and horizontals. If I come down the vertical, you're just going to paint the surface, but it's going to pick the highlights up of those horizontal ones. So in this case, I'm going to cross it on a 45. And that way you're not coming straight down the surface, but you're going across on an angle and you're allowing the highlights to get picked up. And don't worry too much if it comes out too heavy. You can see here where it's coming out a little on the heavy side, and it's not just it's painting versus just picking out highlights. That's fine. On the end of the day, it's gonna just look like you've got some paint chips happening on the structure. So that's perfectly okay. But I'm gonna go ahead now in the vertical. You can come straight down the middles, pick up some more of those highlights. Try also go both directions. Just that way you're not always picking up one side's highlights. You go back in each direction and you pick up highlights going in both directions. As you do this, obviously more and more of the paint will come off your brush and you're left with more of a drier brush, hence the term dry brushing, and you'll end up with what you want. Now you also have to be careful because there's limitations to the molding because of the way these are molded, where you're literally having two halves of the mold come together and then separate. You can't have undercuts. So whereas down here you actually have stringers, up here they're like shelves. They're not stringers, they're just shelves, like notches cut into like a pyramid style. So when you look at it from the side or from the bottom, you kind of get the hint of it. But that's where this process actually helps, because as this dry brush picks up the edges, you'll have the black wash down inside the valley. The dry brushing will pick up the highlights on the high surface, and you end up with the proper depth that you want. So coming up here, this was a little harder to see with the light green. Up here in the nose section where you have this darker bronze green, and you have all of these panels and stuff that I've painted black, all of this should highlight very, very nicely. And it should really show how easy this process is to make an interior look a lot more detailed than it really is. And you get a simple kit that might not have anything on the inside and just a couple of little bits of sheet styrene painted black, and dry brush like this can make all the difference on an interior, just to busy it up enough to make it look like there's something happening even when there really isn't. And then we'll go ahead and we'll get these engines done. And I guess I should have said right off the top of the video, I don't have a lot of work I can do on this one other than this dry brushing, and then I'm going to go ahead and black wash all of the components that still need to be black washed. Once those are done, we're just kind of waiting. So unfortunately, I don't think this video will be a full hour. It's probably going to be a little shorter than that. But yeah, and then I'll prep a lot more off camera, and then the next video when we come back, we'll just start doing assembly, getting the fuselage glued together. All that kind of stuff will all happen. But you can see it's not hard. It doesn't take long to do. And you can be messy with it because it's all going to be, you know, for the most part, hidden inside the fuselage. But then you start looking at, for example, the insides of the fuselage now. The complete difference you have in terms of your detail. And I'll zoom in because I don't know how well this gets picked up on camera. But you can see the difference between that and that. And it does look a little messy. You can see all of these. it's funny because there's some of the detail that doesn't get picked up by camera and some that gets exaggerated, like this little bit of black down here where the paint has kind of run and dried. In person you can barely see it, but on this camera it stands out like this. Like there you can really see it in the reflections. You don't see it nearly as bad in person, and when you add the cockpit you're never going to even see that. That's going to disappear almost completely into that disappears completely underneath. But you can really start to see the difference between just painted and then weathered and dry brushed. And especially on this rear fuselage, you'll see here where the stringers, they just look like they're drawn on, and there it looks like there's depth and shadow. And you can just see how much just a simple black wash and a dry brush pops those details. Now, the other thing, I just need to get a Q-tip. You'll see here, I'll zoom you back out again, on the roof here of the bomb bay, where that is legitimately, you know, that's legitimately too much black. Just a simple Q-tip. This is a special pointed one. I bought these on Amazon for next. Any Q-tip would work. I just wet it in my mouth. It's tempera paint, so even if you get some in your mouth, it's not going to affect you. But then you can soften this down. You can wipe it, and you can take out some of that excess black paint and tone it down to where you want it. The pooling, all that disappears, and now it just starts to look like hydraulics, oils, whatnots, dirt, stuff that you would actually find, you know, what's the word I'm thinking of? When you fire your guns, you've got carbon buildup and whatnots, all that stuff from inside the plane. But you just soften that up, blend it all together. You'll see how much of it gets picked up on the Q-tip. So you're actually pulling off excess as well as kind of blending it all together. And now it doesn't look nearly as bad as it did. That'll get fixed when I glue the fuselage back together. So that's, or glue it together. So that's not a problem. But there, now it doesn't look nearly as bad. And that's how easy it is to clean up. If you get too much on, just clean it up with a Q-tip, a bit of water, a paintbrush, you know, a Kleenex with water, a lint-free rag, whatever you have around. You can clean up. You can take it off completely, and you can start fresh if it didn't work. It's significantly easy to work with, and it makes a huge impact. So, and then we'll look at the engines. Same thing here. You've got one non-weathered and one weathered, and it's not as noticeable on this, but I mean there's a good difference there, and it looks dirty, it looks used, it's not fresh and clean, and there's some depth to it. So that being said, now we'll go ahead and I can show you, since this is that side of the fuselage is pretty much done with, we'll go through this side, we'll apply the black wash. We'll get all these interior panels. See, some of these sides have been black washed. The green sides have. That has. So I can put, actually leave that out. That has. Instrument panel has, but I can dry brush that. Those are good. Those are good. That can be black washed. Those are good. Dry brushed, black wash. Then these two need the back sides done. And you can also see here, that's been done. The seats. Same thing. One seat has been black washed and the other one has not. So I can go ahead and dry brush. And you know what? I keep zooming in and out, but we'll zoom in again. And you can see This one has been black washed. This one hasn't. And again, the black wash I'm using, it's literally just black tempera paint. Water-based kids craft paint. I bought it at Walmart for like $1.99 for, I think it's about half a liter. 500 mils of black paint. Mix it with a bit of water. I'll show you in a second. I have it sitting here ready to go. But it's just mixed with water. A touch of dish soap, hand soap. I put a drop of liquid soap in it just to help break the water tension so it doesn't, beat up on the surface of the model and flows, and that's all it takes. And then you compare those two seats, and one looks flat and one looks used. It just adds depth and character. It's like putting a filter on your camera. It makes all the difference in the world, and it's so easy to do. So that's got to get black washed. And then you can look at things like, I'll put that away actually. The instrument panel is another perfect example. If you look at the instrument panel, that's painted green, and then I've went through and picked out some of the details in black, and then I've given it that black wash. And now what I'll do, I'll dry brush the right half of it. Just the right half of it. I'll try to keep this in frame while I do it. And you see how simple it is just to run your brush over, let the highlights get picked up. And then like that's it. You can see that difference between what I just did and what I didn't. And it looks like a million times better. So it's just that easy to add a bit of detail to it. So I'm going to go ahead and do the other side now. And this one's a little harder because I don't have another unit to compare you to. Just to, you're just going to have to use your memory. I did the half and half, but now when I go through and you just do this, and there you go. Your instrument panel is fully detailed out. When that's inside the cockpit, and you're looking through the windows and you see that, that's all you need. It's enough shadows and highlights. That's all you need. You don't need to go super crazy with painting every instrument. You don't have to go crazy with aftermarket photo etch or 3D decals. You can do it if you want. There's nothing wrong with it. But in a case like this, when it's inside the cockpit and no one's ever going to be too close, like I said, I'm a 3-foot modeler. As long as it looks good from 3 feet away, I'm happy. And that will look like $1,000 from 3 feet away. So here, cockpit, I'm just getting the highlights of this corrugated floor picked out. The paint's starting to go a little dry on me, so I'm going to add a bit more to it. This is also a downside with the water-based paints. A lot of people use oils for this level, this stage. The water-based paints tend to dry pretty quick. When I did this with like the Model Master, the oil-based paints that I used to use. When I used the oil-based paints, they lasted a lot longer. They didn't dry out as fast. You could get more work done with the same paints longer. But I mean, it's the nature of how it is. So here you can go through again. You've got all these little kind of corrugated floors, individual panels, the rudder pedals. You can get in here and highlight all those, right? All your edges and corners, the pedestal, all the edges and corners. Pick it all up, make it look like things have been dinged and dented, and you've got wear on the corners. Highlight all those little edges, and that's all you're doing. Just like in real life, right? Edges are high, corners are dark. Everything has a color gradient, and you're just adding that. You're just fudging it on the model to give it the look that it has, what your eyes expect to see. You expect to see depth. You expect to see highlights. One thing that I need figures, and if you really want to see how highlights and lowlights and shadows make a model, look up somebody who does really, really good figure painting. There's those I think they're 18 millimeter figures, busts, about yay high, resin, whatever. It is unbelievable. Even somebody who does a 1/35th scale like tank diorama, some of the people can paint figures. It's mind-blowing what they can pull off, and it's so much just highlights and shadows, and that's all you play with. And there you go. You go from it's a flat color, but it's enough that when you're looking down at it, you're seeing some variation in color. You're seeing highlights. Like I said, you're seeing shadows. It looks like it's been used. And that's the look I'm going for. I want it to look like it's been used. So that's the dry brushing process. And the reason I'm going back at it backwards, and in reality, you black wash first, then you dry brush second. However, in this demo, I'm showing you the dry brushing first, simply to compare a finished product with an untouched product. So now we're going to go and do black wash. So as I said, that is just straight tempera paint. I'll pull out what I use here. This is what I have. Scola, non-toxic black paint, made in Canada. I don't know. Like I said, I got this at Walmart, $1.99 or something. Like there's the white I have, tempera, literal tempera paint. It's just water-based craft paint. So there's a little bit of paint in the bottom. Fill it with water. These are just plastic shot glasses you get from the dollar store. They're, I don't know, like $2 for a pack of 25. So I fill a bit of paint at the bottom, fill it up with water. As I said, a touch of dish soap just to allow it to break the surface tension so it doesn't beat up on the surface. Once again, an old brush that is no good for painting. And this is it. You just load it up and you just start painting. And you'll see it looks horrible when you start. But as you paint it on, and it dries, it doesn't look quite as dark. And you just go through. And I'm not painting so much as I'm like dabbing. I want it to drop as much liquid into the corners as possible. So I'm not smearing the paint. I'm dabbing it down so it drops it into the corners. Something like in here I'll paint just to try to, you know, because you're going to have a little bit of overlap and you don't want to be able to see in and see a stark difference in color. So anywhere, you know, like here, I'll just paint the surface just to give it an overall similar color. But then down in here, right, like I said, dab. Let that black drop into the corners. Keep loading up the brush because you want excess paint to come off. You want the black pigment to drop off. That's the whole point. So same thing back here. I'll just gently paint this rear fuselage just to make sure that the colors are going to stay the same. And that's it. You can just like that. You can see how the rear fuselage now has shadows. And that's taken, I don't even know, 5-10 minutes. Same thing through here. And again, you put down too much, just wipe it off. Start fresh. The one thing you have to be careful of is how you are mixing your paint types. If you're painting with an oil-based paint, use a water-based wash or whatnot. If you're using a water-based paint, use an oil-based wash, or at least one is not compatible. These are a water-based paint. The Vallejo paints are water-based paints, but once they dry, they won't lift with just straight water. So I could wipe this with a damp cloth and I could remove all of this black wash and it won't affect the underlayer. I'd have to use alcohol to strip this Vallejo paint off. The problem is if you use like a Model Master paint that's an oil-based paint and then you use an oil-based wash, you're going to soften the undercolor and you're going to reactivate it and you're going to mix the colors. And then you've got to start your entire paint process from scratch. So if you're unsure, do a test. Grab a piece of spare plastic, some part you're not going to use, just a bit of the sprue, just anywhere. Or like, you know, inside a wing, you know, a section of wing that you're never going to see. Paint it with your base color and then do a wash on top. Not only are you able to see how your wash will affect your base color, but you'll see if you're going to reactivate the pigment. And you can practice. or grab an old model or whatever. Just, don't be afraid to experiment. Worst case scenario, you just have to paint it again. So it's always good to practice, test your style, your processes before you commit it to, a model that you've invested time and money into. And it's a pretty, I'm not being careful. I'm just flooding the surface with, I'm going to be careful here because I have an actual window and I don't want to get black paint on that window. But yeah, so that's pretty much it. I've just black washed the interior of that fuselage. Now you give it, it's already starting to dry back here. An hour, maybe 2 hours at the most. That will be fully dry, and you can go and you can dry brush on top of it. That's all it takes. So I'm gonna go through here, black wash all these other components that I did not black wash the first time. You've also got to be careful because if you black wash, something like this, you turn it over, well, the area you just washed is sitting, and it's going to cause some weird issues. Something like this seat, I'm not terribly worried because it's going to be sitting on the frame. It's not the end of the world if the frame gets a little mixed up, but a larger piece like this, I wouldn't black wash it, then lay the wet side down. So in this case, I black washed one side before. Now I'll go through and black wash the back side. The other interesting thing that I've come to realize over the years, whenever I've done this on an aluminum side like this, I've never really been able to do a dry brush that looks good. Excuse me, I can't, if you use a gray, it mutes the aluminum, and if you use aluminum, it just looks like aluminum. So, if anybody out there knows of a good way to do a black wash on aluminum and make it look good, by all means, leave me a message down below. Let me know what process you use. So here's an example where I am getting a little bit of bubbles. So I'm just unloading my brush, smoothing the bubbles out. And then you're not going to get those little bubble marks when it dries. So there. And I'll do the same to this. This one won't be so bad because it has a lot more busyness going on. But you can see just instantly how that just looks so much better when you've got all those shadows defining the detail. All that detail pops. And I've done 10 seconds of work. Little too much paint on that brush, so I'm going to unload it. I'm going to come through. I'm going to pick up some of that extra black. Same over here. Just wipe the brush on the cloth. It will then suck up some of that pigment, some of that paint off of the surface. And it allows you to control how much you got going on. Same up here. A little too much. I'll just go through and... There we go. Same on the bottom here. This is what I should have done to that Bombay that I had to use the Q-tip on. I did not go through and clean it up like this, and I paid for it. But at the end of the day, what I'm doing with the brush now is pretty much exactly what I did with the Q-tip once it dried. It's just whether I do it before or after. And then those are the engines I did. So these are the two engines I still have to do. This is painted with Vallejo steel metallizer as the base, and then I hand brushed that accessory housing, the front. It's already a darker color, and the detail in here is really soft to begin with. So you're not actually going to see much of this. I mean, if anyone's ever worked around a radial engine, they're dirty. The running joke I used to remember around the hangar was, you want to see oil dripping, because if it's not dripping oil, it means it's out of oil. So you wanted these engines to be dirty. They were designed to vent and bleed and everything else all over the place. So you wanted to see that. I think this is the last. Oh no, I gotta do the engines. Getting close though. So I'm gonna go through here. I want it really heavy on the floor. I want those shadows to really pop. And that's the other thing. Like, I can go back over this again, even though I've already dry brushed it and highlighted the surface. If I'm not a fan of where it is, I can go back and do another black wash over top. It will mute that dry brushing slightly, but it will help the shadows pop more. So I can control that with how much I apply and when I apply it. Like I said, this I'm just flooding it with black paint. Like I said, I want all of those seams to be shadowed. Make it look like there's more detail there than there really is. And same thing, I'll go through on the side. I'll pick up the excess pigment and bubbles. I want to put a bit more on the floor. I really want to darken up this floor. And I think I might actually go in here and add more to this one while I'm talking about it. Just flood this corrugation some more. I can always go back and add more highlights to this later, but I think I want to really accentuate the corrugations in the floor here. Now, this panel up front is supposed to be plywood, and initially I was going to paint it wood, but I think I'm going to leave it like that. And it's only because the nose gets modified with that radar on this version I'm building, and I don't think you'll really be able to see that. There should have been even more modifications that happen in the nose of the RAF one in terms of like extra tables and workbenches and stuff. I'm not going to go down that road. I've already done a lot of work in the Bombay, and I'm already significantly behind on this one compared to the other ones I'm building, so I'm just going to leave it. I'm also going to do the insides of these engine cowlings. I don't know how much of this will be visible once I install the engines, but I'd rather have a little bit in here so that if you do happen to catch a glimpse of the insides, it doesn't look all clean and fresh, because it should not be clean and fresh inside of the cowling of a B-24. So I'm just painting it in here, making it look dirty. I'm not even going to ever come back and clean this up. If it leaves big giant blobs of black, the more the better, right? It's already going to be shadowed. Any type of variation you can get in highlights or shadows when you're in a darker area will just make it look like there's more going on than there really is. Oops, I forgot the other one. And it's artistic, right? That's the thing with this. It's not just recreation. You've got to take some artistic liberties, and you've got to... You're making it look busier than it is. You're adding detail that doesn't exist just by the hint. Like, if you ever actually get up close and look at a painting, right? And you're like, oh, look at those trees, like the paint. And yeah, get up close and they realize, like, wow, like they don't look like trees at all. But once you step back from the painting and you look at it from a distance, it works. You're not painting it to be inspected at the micro level. You're making a painting to be enjoyed at the macro level, right? The forest for the trees kind of thing. So it's the same when you're building the models. You're not building the model for someone to be here looking at it, this close. Where's the camera? You're building something for someone to look at it from this distance. And so you're making the impression of detail, the hint of detail. I gotta dig through my box here and pull out the rest of the cowling fronts. I didn't really plan ahead for those. Same thing. The chances of you seeing down inside here are slim to none, but I'm gonna add a whole bunch of detail in here. I mean, air quotes detail. I'm just going to smack a bunch of black paint in here and pretend that I'm doing something. But again, it tones down the aluminum. And if you do happen to get a look in there, you'll see shadows. So I think once I'm done these 4, that then covers all of everything that needed black wash or that I could dry brush at this time around. So on the note of this weathering, I'm pretty much going to lay it off there. I will go through and dry brush whatever still needs to be dry brushed off camera, so that when we come back to the next live stream, all of this will be prepped and ready to go and effectively just be ready for final assembly. So that's where I'll leave, not the video as a whole, but just the weathering portion of this. So I'm going to take, I don't even know what time it is, to be perfectly honest. 21:05. So it's been a little over half an hour, which I say I don't think it's going to last an hour. And then almost every video I hit the hour mark and there's still more I could do. I'm going to clean up just a little bit. I'm going to put some stuff in bags and move stuff around. Give me a little bit of bench space to work on. And then I think we'll take a bit of time and we'll just start getting some parts off of sprues that we can start working on the next round when I come back. So I'm going to get that out of the way. For those, I don't think I did this on camera last time. I think we trimmed the parts down, but I've got both vertical stabs and the horizontal stab assembled, and I've cleaned up the seams for the most part. There's a little bit in here I still have to do some sanding, and it will probably take a little bit of Mr. Surfacer on some of these seams, but I probably won't do that until after I have this assembled as a unit, because I'm going to have to go through and Mr. Surfacer down inside this seam anyways. So I think I'm going to glue these together. Maybe on the next video, I'll get these things going together, and that would be a sub-assembly we can poke away at in conjunction with the rest of them. I'm just going to find my instructions because I don't remember where I stashed those. And then we can take a quick look through these and see kind of where we are and what we need for the next video. So, we still need to worry about the control yokes, but they're relatively easy to deal with, so I'm not going to worry about that. Windows we can glue in on the next video. That'll be one of the things we do. Cleaning up and gluing in all the perspex and clear pieces all along the fuselage sides, including the little doors and everything, and we'll do all that in the next video. The one thing I do have to do on this video, I have to get these ammo boxes. We'll get those prepped to go here in a minute. I have to paint those up off camera and have them ready to go for next video. This is all done. This is all done. There is a little panel here I can clean up and install for the next video. We're done with that. The nose landing gear we'll have to work on. So I'll get the landing gears trimmed off. So I need that box. I need the ammo boxes. I need the nose landing gear. That's all done. That's all done. That's done. I'm not using those turrets. That's more or less done. Main landing gear I can trim off. And we're almost now into like finishing touches. So yeah, so let's start grabbing some sprues. I'll get another little shot glass ready to go so we can store parts in it when we're working away, and we can start trimming some of the parts that we need. So I'm getting really close to being able to knock off a lot of these sprues. I mean, this sprue only has some minor pieces on it. This one will only have a couple of minor pieces on it when we're done. I'll have to sit down one day and trim these down and throw out, I'm not using any of the crews, throw out all of these sprues that are just taking up space. Probably means I can most likely dispose of the box soon too, and that gets a huge, massive item off of my shelf. Clean up some space around here. These I'm not... No, sorry. These are the ones I am using because I have the bomb bay doors open. The other doors are the ones I'm not using. So all of those, like I said, I can start cleaning up and organizing and figuring out and getting rid of any pieces I don't need. And anyways, I think the only other part I talked about that I haven't trimmed off yet is that little tiny panel right there for the bomb aimer. I don't know if the RAF aircraft had this one, but I'm going to install it anyways because why the hell not? And you know what? While I'm at it, let's trim off these yokes. I can clean them up and prep them. I have to paint that little panel black anyway, so I can paint these two yokes black at the same time. Oh! And be prepped for the next video. Okay, where are we for time? 21:10. So you know what? I'm going to take the 5 or 10 minutes it's going to take me. We'll clean up all these pieces, and we'll sign off at that point. So whatever time that will be the time that we sign off. And US 185 VOSS2. I apologize. I did see your comment earlier. If you are still watching the stream, thank you for commenting. If you're not watching the stream, again, apologies. I caught that. I meant to say something, and I got busy. Get myself a round file. And that will be able to get down inside this little corner, and I can file off the little bit of that nub. You got to be careful with the knife. It's really easy to slip and take a chunk out of the area or cut the yoke right off. You get these, I got a pack of like 8 different files, you know, flat, curved, triangle, square, the rounds. It's a great little purchase because you can get right into here and you don't end up destroying the shape or accidentally snapping something that you don't need. Or that you do need, I should say. So yeah, that's about that. Put that in there. Get this guy going. You can see you got to put a lot of pressure on it with the knife, especially if it's starting to dull. This is a relatively sharp blade, so I can get in here without much effort. But if you have a duller blade, it's very easy to snap something, put too much pressure, the knife jumps. Either you take a chunk of plastic that you need, or... And trust me, it's happened to me a few times. You end up sitting here with a knife blade in your thumb. And let me tell you, that's not fun. These, debating whether I'm going to try. I've never attempted to do wood grain. I've seen a tutorial there by Nigel's Modeling Bench, a great tutorial on how to do wood grain. If you are interested in painting wood grain, check his channel out, look for it. I literally just search his channel for wood grain, and he has a tutorial, you know, what shade brown to paint it, what oils to use, you know, what color. He's currently building a I think it's a 1/28 scale Sopwith Camel Hasegawa kit, and he's wood graining everything, every fuselage stringer, wing rib, everything is being wood grained, and it looks amazing. However, I don't really know if I have the patience to do that. So I think I might do these ammo boxes the same way I did these ammo boxes, which is just paint it a brown color and then hit it with a black wash. And I might dry brush a darker, or maybe the other way around, dry brush a lighter tan color, because it's got there's these highlights here. So I painted a dark brown, and then I hit it with black wash, and then I dry brush it with a light tan. It might be just enough to look like wood without having to do a full wood grain effect, even though I would love to do a full wood grain effect. I don't think doing it on a live stream is the time or place to learn that. The other issue is with these older models, which I'm suffering on these landing gear right now. These landing gears are very intricate. You get all these little bumps and lumps and shapes. And the molds are getting old. So you're getting a lot of seams, a lot of mold seams coming through. There's sink marks that are forming in here that shouldn't be there. And the sprue gates are massive. Big old chunky sprue gates. There's a ejector pin marking here. So there's a lot of cleanup you got to do on these gear, but it's hard to do the cleanup in and around all of this little tiny detail. So I'm going to do some of it. I'm going to clean like what I'm doing here, a little bit of sanding, knock off this little mold seam ridge where I can, and then live with it where I can live with it. There's a little bit of flash on that corner. I want to try to knock that off. Same on this side. This dark green plastic also makes it really hard to see where there's flash because it's already dark. It kind of hides stuff in the shadows. And then as soon as you start to sand, you turn it a lighter color green. And then you can't tell if the light color is because you've sanded. Without having done it, it's hard to explain. But if there's a ridge and you start sanding that ridge, you create like a little flap of plastic. And you keep sanding until that, or the sanding dust gets jammed. If you have a mismatch in your plastic and you have a ridge, as you're sanding, the dust will get trapped in that little notch and look lighter. And then once you sand, as you sand it flush, all that dust will disappear. And once the plastic becomes flush, it's a constant color across the plastic. But this darker green plastic, as you sand it, it turns lighter. So you're looking at it and you can't tell, is it light because I've sanded or is it light because there's still like a ridge there and I have to sand more. And you don't want to sand more because you can very quickly distort the final shape of the item when you're sanding more than you need to. So just be careful. In some cases, it's better to undersand and leave like a mold ridge than it is to oversand and leave a huge, notch or something, or sand off details that are supposed to be there, or sand something round that was supposed to be square. So just take your time. This is where references are key if you have them. And I know this is probably a little bit boring for anybody who is just watching me sit here with files, but this right here is a good chunk of what, when I'm building, what takes the time. If I'm sitting at this desk for 3 or 4 hours of a day working, there's a good chance that I'm spending most of it doing what I'm doing right now. Parts prep, seam sanding, Mr. Surfacer, putty, sand, repeat. Which, by the way, I have made stickers to sell that say putty, sand, repeat. I just haven't actually made them up yet. I've got my Sean's Aviation stickers. I plan to make a similar size one. Putty, like I said, I've got them drawn. The artwork is done. I just haven't purchased the stickers yet. But putty, sand, repeat. And then one about the carpet monster stealing your parts. I just have to bite the bullet, spend the money, and buy a chunk of them. And then I can sell them to you. That being said, you know what? I think they're on the website. So if you're here and you click on the link to go to my my store, you'll see the stickers should be available. So you can pick up something like that. If you spend a lot of your time, what I'm doing here, putty, sand, repeat, take a look at that. As an example where a flat file would be more handy. So I'm pretty sure I'm going to call it there, because that's about all the prep work I can do. So yeah, I'm going to take this time to... Kid stole my Sharpie. Done that. Done that. So for the next video, I plan to finish all dry brushing and then paint remainder of interior parts. And I think that's all I have to do with. I have to paint the interior parts that are in this cup. I have to finish all of the dry brushing on all the parts that have not been dry brushed yet. And then we'll come back again in a couple of weeks and we'll continue working along. We'll start assembling these sub-assemblies. We'll glue in all the windows. We'll get ready to start gluing this fuselage together. We'll start gluing the wings together. We can get the engines glued into place. We'll work on the sub-assemblies on the tail. So that's that. So, for everybody who is out there, what's the time? How close am I? Did I get to the hour? What's the hour? What's the time? Why is my phone not working? 21:21. I am 9 minutes off of my timing. So, we're going to wrap it up here. So for all of those who are out there in YouTube land watching this video live, I thank you. For anybody who's watching this after the fact, again, thank you for watching. I do these every couple of weeks, and even when this model's done, I will continue this process with another model and another model. So my plan is to probably about once a month do one of these live stream builds. Keep an eye on Facebook. And here on YouTube, I tend to make the announcements a week or so out of when I am going to do these. But be aware that the schedule is pretty fluid, as I do have commitments outside of this desk that sometimes get in the way of me coming down here and doing this. So keep an eye out. I've got tons of other content on the channel, more stuff coming. But yes, thank you. Thank you for watching. We'll see you all next time.